Ready, set, go.
Okay, welcome to the Devil's Imago. I think this is more of like a text-based sort of point and click deal. It's supposed to only take about half an hour, one ending. So, oh geez, hello, spring. Spring has never been so foreboding. Okay, hello. Prologue. What a lovely countryside. They exhumed the first statue as they were digging furrows in the fallow field on Fool's Day, which made everyone suspect that Rougie had somehow put it there in jest. We're starting out very verbose here. This is some freaking literature is what we got here. You see, the artifact they had dug up was unlike anything they had seen, and it unsettled the men. Oh, hello. Oh, with the eyes. Oh, the eyes. I don't like the eyes. Unlike the antique white marble statues from nearby Saint-Remy, this figure was black, made of bronze, not stone, with sickly olivine patina and a strange, malignant, glimmering sheen to it. It was a statue of a young man, although some of the villagers described it as a maiden. It's a non-binary icon is what it is. We love them. It had appendages protruding from its shoulder blades like wings, but unlike the delicate feathered wings of angels, these were bug-like and monstrous. Most striking were its inlaid eyes, irises made of bright glass, which against the dark bronze looked like the corona of the sun during a full eclipse. Looking directly at the statue's piercing gaze made the men want to cover up the statue. See, those eyes in the smaller frame do not really match the ones that I'm looking at in the bigger picture there. The ones in the bigger picture there are a little bit more unsettling. The idea of it being trickery was comforting. The men had a good laugh about it, and at the tavern at lunchtime, Rougie laughed along with them, laughed as the wine poured into his mouth. You gotta be careful. If you're laughing at the same time that you're drinking wine, that's a fast track to choking on wine, or at least getting a bad case of the hiccups. Laughed with the tacit understanding that even jokingly suggesting he was not behind the mischief would introduce an uneasiness, black bile disturbing the equilibrium of sanguine joviality. Jesus Christ, this guy with his words. Or I don't know who made this person with their words. Hang on. Rougie laughed with the tacit understanding that even jokingly suggesting he was not behind the mischief would introduce an uneasiness. So to even say that he wasn't at fault for the appearance of this statue would be like, it would sort of be like a he doth protest too much sort of situation. Black bile would invite itself in anyway, as the young shepherd Domenico hurtled down from the side of the mountain in frenzied panic. His voice cracked as he yelled out that Le Seigneur Curate Pierre was dead. What are those previous words? Le Seigneur Curate Pierre was dead? Editing, Connor, you can look those up, I guess. The poor man was impaled, upside down, on top of a tall pine. Ooh, is this a Vlad the Impaler kind of deal, or is this a little bit more abstract? Like, is there someone going around and impaling people, or was this a self-inflicted crime? Hello, the Hanged Man. Okay. As he ascended the mountain with the herd of men from the village following in tow like a somber transhumance, with the words. With the words, it's just a lot of words. Domenico hoped that what he saw was some kind of gruesome mirage, a trick of light caused by his frequent migraines. He could hear the men talk amongst themselves about Pear. Alright, I guess we're listening in on this. We're listening in on this. He slowed his pace to hear what the men were saying. Pear's real name was Pierre Trinquant. Or Trinquant, I don't know, whatever the French pronunciation of that is. He was from a city up north. Used to be a bishop, got to that rank unusually fast apparently, but got sent here to be a humble parish priest. Rumors ran amok when he first arrived a year ago, how he had been possessed, or perhaps summoned the devil to possess young women at the convent for which he acted as confessor. How he narrowly escaped execution by pleading for exile. Was he doing some funny business under the guise of the Catholic Church? Never heard of that happening ever in once in history. That's definitely not a pattern that shows up in the real world. It did not escape the villagers, this understanding that the church had picked their village as a place equal or worse than hell itself. Oh, well that seems a little hurtful. Pear, although young and good-looking, he was the mercurial, charming kind, with doe eyes, a pale complexion, and a svelte body. I don't know what a svelte body, but most of that fits my description pretty dang well. So I'm going to assume that I also have a body that could be described as svelte. Was both lech and hermit, which made people less keen to go to church. I don't know what a lech is. Editing Connor, throw that definition in. You're going to be looking up a lot of words while editing this. Gwen, I'm going to go with Gwen, carpenter, takes 2-3 quick steps ahead of the group and catches up to Domenico. Hey kid, how much longer until we get to that poor bastard? Gwen's face was red. He was puffing from the effort. But even now he walked with the masculine assertiveness of a natural leader. Had he been born in nobility, he would no doubt have been an unquestioned ruler. That's a good face. Honestly, I like that face. He's got good hair, good facial hair. Good face. His unbuttoned shirt revealed his thick chest hair, and among it, not quite hidden, a scar in the shape of the triple fleur-de-lis. A scar in the shape? A scar in the shape of the triple fleur-de-lis? That's quite the scar. How do you get that? Domenico wanted to reach in and rest his hand there on the man's oxen heart. Domenico, you keep it in. You keep your wits about you there, friendo. People are dying around here. We can't get too frisky at times like these. Just past this crest, in the next clearing. Sorry, Gwen. Despite his heavy prosthetic prosthetic leg, clanking with each step and his visible limp, Domenico's muscle memory, endurance, and speed on stony mountainous trails was unmatched by anyone else in the village. Nice. Cool. Don't pay too much attention to them. Gwen nodded in the direction of the rest of the men. They're rattled by the statue we found earlier. I think it's cursed. You should take a look at it. It's real weird. You might like it though. Alright. Gwen knows that Domenico's into that weird shit. Domenico's not like other girls. He laughed a big, warm, hearty laugh. And Domenico smiled politely as he wondered what Gwen meant by that. It means he knows her into weird shit. He knows her a little bit of a freaky deaky. Nothing wrong with that. He was thankful for Gwen's grounding presence beside him. as each inexorable step they took towards Pear's remains made Domenico's heart pound faster. The clearing opened the way all clearings do. Is there more than one? I guess there's only one way that all clearings do, is what the sentence is saying. The tree line came to an abrupt end, and all that was left was lush, tall grasses and the open sky above. Yeah, you're right. That is how all clearings open. That's the way they do that. And of course, the lone pine tree. He heard everyone else gasp and swear, and with mounting dread, Domenico forced himself to look. Let me see it! Let me see him! Give me what I'm looking for! There he is! There it was, real as ever, displayed upside down in death like his namesake. Pear's body was a revolting spectacle one could not look away from. I mean, in card form, it's a little bit more digestible, but yeah, that is pretty brutal, I will say. A large branch protruded from his chest, which I don't see at the moment, tearing through his black soutane. There was surprisingly little amount of blood, considering the massive injury that the man had seemingly sustained. Well, that's good, I guess. Well, maybe that's just dried up at this point. His face was almost unrecognizable. Gone were his charming looks, if they're plural. His expression was petrified in absolute terror, eyes wide open. It was as if a giant had plucked the poor priest from the ground and violently skewered him onto this tree and abandoned him just so. No person could have done this to another. So did he do it to himself, or are there other more devious forces at work? All right, lads, oh boy, my French accent is struggling today. Let's bring him down. Gwen looked weary as he helped the other men with the ladder. Domenico could tell that he was already thinking about the aftermath of this discovery. Bringing the body down was no easy task. It was so deeply impaled onto the tree that the men decided that anything short of cutting the branch would be an useless endeavor. I understand that you want to use "an" before a word that begins with a vowel. I understand that is generally the rule, except for you, because it technically starts with a Y sound in the English language, because English doesn't make any goddamn sense. So you still gotta use "a" when it comes to a useless endeavor. I'm sorry, I don't make the rules, and if I did, they'd make a lot more sense than the rules of the English language currently are. They all watched in apprehensive silence as Gwen carefully sawed the limb off the tree. And it sounded exactly like that. For fear of retribution from the church on their already vulnerable community, the villagers all agreed that it was best not to report Pear's demise, to the city. Back at the tavern, Gwen gathered everyone and talked solemnly about the tragedy being a divine sign, equal parts a challenge and a chance. He talked of revolt, of resistance. If the Catholic Church thought of their home as a circle of hell, so be it. This is where those greedy bastards came to die. If this is hell for them, then it must be heaven for the righteous. Hell yeah, Gwen. Hell yeah. Oh, that's epic. That's cool. Pear's fate was proof of it. Gwen's words were the words of a man. True. With rebellion coursing through his veins. In his youth he was sentenced to work at the oar in the king's galleys for insubordination, the brand on his chest forever marking him as a Galerian and mere property of the crown. Ah, that's where he got the scar. Alright, that makes a lot of sense. Makes sense. That he made it out alive, free, and later picked up the respectable trade of carpentry meant he was one of the lucky ones. The burning yellow furor never did leave him. Somewhere in his mind he was still rowing with dozens of comrades on the high seas. Cool. Alright, good to know. Nice little character study there. There was a morose wistfulness that permeated the air like miasma. Bro, just say you have a liberal arts degree. Just say it. You don't have to write all of these crazy words. Just say you went to university and speak like a normal man. You don't have to speak like a normal man. If you want to go for a style, I'm not going to stop you. This is fine. This is cool. I really enjoy this. Pear's burial service was silent. No bell tolled. A quiet end to a strange exile. After the service, Domenico's grandmother took him aside. Bad luck comes in three, child. Something worse is approaching on the horizon. Much worse than statues and dead priests. Great. Thanks, Granny. Thank you for that word of encouragement. A few days later, another 2 bronze statues emerged from the earth. Oh, that's not good. That's not good. You know, if one random bronze statue just appears out of the blue, then maybe that's just a neutral weird thing that happens. But as soon as there's like a good gaggle of them, a gaggle of bronze statues, then you got problems. Trust me, I know. Continue. Summer. It is summertime, whether you like it or not. Welcome to summertime. The historian. Is the historian dying now? Ooh. The days were stretching into the night like a long yawn. The air was dry and filled with the smell of pine and wild thyme and rosemary and lavender. The cicadas had at last emerged from their subterranean slumber and sang their heart out, relentless and choleric, under blinding sunlight. Domenico disliked the summer. The heat made him more conscious of his own cumbersome body. His missing leg gnawed at him more often, more intensely, giving him the urge to prod, scratch, caress his prosthetic limb to no satisfactory end. I hope that's... I mean, I've never had a prosthetic limb before, so I don't know if, you know, that itch is a normal thing. Hopefully it's not an infection. I really hope that's not an infection, because you should get that looked at, if that's the case. He was lying down in the hilly pastures, looking after his sheep, when he noticed on the horizon a man on horseback heading towards the village. Okay, alright, man on horseback. Nothing inherently problematic about that. Visitors weren't that rare, but something about that dot on the horizon made Domenico feel like he was witnessing a fast approaching storm, a vexation of celestial dimensions. His missing leg itched again. Great, so now that he's got a missing leg, it also doubles as a spidey sense, apparently. When he got back to the village, Domenico could hear some kind of hubbub at the tavern. We love tavern hubbub. It's my favorite kind of hubbub, quite frankly. He reached at the door when it opened suddenly, startling him. Framed by the warm light and smelling of wine, his sister Nanoon met him with a look of delighted surprise. Accompanying her was the stranger. Oh.
Domenico, I was just about to go look for you. This is Monsieur de Valdemer. He's a historian.
Oh, This is the historian, okay.
He just arrived today.
The man stared intently at Domenico, seizing him from head to toe. It made Domenico feel dizzy. Something about de Vaudremer's gaze was disarming, made him feel exposed. There was a billowing glimmer in his dark eyes. Is a billowing glimmer a good thing or a bad thing? Dominique, I presume. Your lovely sister. The nun is her name, yes. She told me about you. I believe she offered me a room in your house. But I could only understand... Oh, wait. Maybe this guy is Dutch. I don't have a Dutch accent, and I don't know how to do a Dutch accent. I did hear that you speak French, which intrigues me so. Upon saying that, de Vaudremer tipped his hat extravagantly. Domenico thought it was an unnatural thing to do towards a peasant like himself, but it was nice, for once, to be seen by a genteel man. Domenico looked at Nunu, who blushed when she heard her name mentioned by the man.
Is this true? Will he be staying with us? Does Mamet know? Well, I haven't told Mamet yet. I was about to go and introduce him to her. Better hurry then. Wouldn't want her to go to sleep and wake up on the morrow with a stranger in her house. He then turned to de Vaudremer. My sister will take you to our home, and you'll see my grandmother. He stuttered on words, like I am stuttering on the narration, that took too much space in his mouth. French was similar to, but a slightly harsher tongue than Provençal, or Proven... I don't know how to pronounce that version of C. But I guess this is a French dialect. She decides on the matters of the house, not me. Ha! A small laugh, nothing like Gwen's roaring laughter. Something more subtle, more like a private invitation that de Vaudremer was extending towards Domenico. Very well, I suppose I shall see you later, Dominique. Domenico watched de Vaudremer as he followed Noon down the street. The historian was tall, and his strides were steady yet ponderous, as if he weighed much more than he looked. He lacked the usual habitus of the noblesse, dressed rather simply for a person of stature. Perhaps it was because the man was an artist of sorts. Perhaps he enjoyed disguising himself, or disguising himself, I'm assuming is what that's supposed to be. Disguising himself as someone of lower class. A true eccentric, somewhat reminiscent of Père in his better days. A man with a lot to give, who, noblesse oblige, cared not how he gave. And as all wealthy men do, he took without care for how or how much he took. Oh man, is Vaudremer gonna be bad news? I kinda want him to be a nice guy. When Domenico finally stepped into the tavern, Gwen's back, sat with his usual friends, shouted and waved for him to come join his table. Join the bros! Join the tavern bros! How about that stranger, eh? Just met him. He seems interesting.
Interesting, yes, sure, interesting. Gwen shook his head. Be careful around that kind of man, kid. There's plenty he's not telling us. Pal, the apprentice blacksmith.
Says he's appointed here by the king himself, but he looks like a common bourgeois.
I don't know. I think that ended up being more British than French, but I tried. He's a historian, an astronomer, and a medical doctor. Quite a description. He's here about the statues, but asked about them once. I think he's here to spy on us. Well, that's an interesting theory.
I don't know. He's going to be staying at ours, which puts him some way away from the village itself. Hearing that, Gwen's face lit up. Perfect. Perfect? That puts you in the perfect position to keep an eye on him. Can you do that for me? Domino stared at Gwen. He was like the embodiment of determination. His body a testament. Oh, he was like the embodiment of determination. His body a testament to that. You're just saying the same thing twice. You're just saying the same thing twice in that sentence. You don't need to say the same thing twice. There was no reason to refuse. Except, I guess. Right. I'll keep an eye on him. Gwen and his entourage beamed with contentment. The carpenter put his calloused hand on Dominico's shoulder. Dominico. His face suddenly went grave and somewhat saturnine. Look up what saturnine means. Put it up there. Just be vigilant. Okay. Alright, I'll do that, Gwen, my friend. My bro, my boy, my lad, my guy. Dominico walked up the path leading to his mazet. Or mazette. I'm not sure. A modest farmhouse a little out of the way of the village, passing the field from which the statues were emerging. He couldn't see them in the dark, but he knew they were there. After that Fool's Day, they periodically found more statues coming out of the ground. It's as if they dug themselves up towards the open sky. One could liken them to the cicada. Ah, jeez. One could liken them to the cicadas. Some of them even had peculiar bug-like features, like membranous wings and odd-jointed legs. Yeah, we heard about the wings. We heard about how weird the wings were. There were about a dozen now, all standing in that field still, abandoned there as the villagers grew superstitious of them and refused to even touch them. You know, at this point, if statues are appearing out of nowhere and they look like that, I don't even know if that's superstitious. I think that's just observing weird shit. I think that's just things happening that can't be easily explained. Like, even with science. Like, what the frick are these statues doing here? Dominico felt their glass eyes on him. Great, we love that. When Dominico got back home, most of the house was plunged in darkness. Mamet and Ninoon had long gone to bed. There was, however, light seeping out of the room the historian now occupied. As quietly as he could, despite his heavy, lopsided steps, full of resolve and heart-pounding, Dominico walked towards the door. Light was pouring out of its keyhole. I guess we're looking through the keyhole. We better not see anything that might get me demonetized. Dominico carefully placed a hand on the door and held his breath as he peered through the keyhole. Better not see anything that's going to get me demonetized. Oh. The dream? Okay. Alright, what's the dream? The path up the mountain calls to him. The air is dry, filled with a sickly sweet fragrance, lavender and rot. He remembers exchanging words with Mamet, although her face is entirely featureless, and the only reason he knows it's her is that he knows it's her. Yeah, that's usually how dreams work. That's usually how they operate. Such, he realizes, are the rules in the world of dreams. Exactly what I just said. The band calls to you. It's you, the lone processionary. I know that's a new voice for Mamet, but I'm trying to give her a distinctly like old French woman kind of voice. It's noon, and the dizzying sun makes the ether dance in the eternal summer heat.
Nothing casts shadows. It's as if the Lord himself eradicated them, his infinite radiance enveloping the world in his impossible brightness in permanent daylight. Okay, alright. It's unnatural. It's divine. This must be what heaven looks like. I'm not entirely sure I want that. I'm not entirely sure that sounds appealing to me. The cicadas, the Lord's relentless choir, sing. When he gets to the clearing, the tall pine tree, he knows he shouldn't look up. I'm gonna look up. I'm gonna look up. Just 'cause I gotta. Yeah, temptation gets the better of him. It sure does. It always does. He looks up. There we are. That's what we're looking for. There was a body up there, all wrapped in a cocoon of processionary silk. 1,000 caterpillars wiggling and 1,000 flies circling. Lavender and rot. There is a body up there, and it's concealed and featureless. But he knows he's looking at Pear. The body is contorted upside down with a dozen pine branches piercing its naked, bruised, rotting flesh. A grotesque inverted San Sebastian. It turns its gaze down at him by looking up. Its mouth opens and closes in a low mass of inaudible whispers. He steps closer. He needs to hear. As the decaying nymphs emerge from the soil, the devil molts into his final Imago. If you couldn't quite hear that, that was kind of the point. The cicadas are so loud. Wow, they really are. He feels like he's been pushed underwater. Those are some loud cicadas. There we go. Domino wakes, drenched in sweat. His body is feverish, skin cold to the touch, inside set ablaze. He trails a hand between his thighs towards the cavity there. Wet. Ah, man, I hate it when that happens. He steps out of bed. He already knows where he's going. Yeah, that's a shame. That's unfortunate. There is light seeping out from under the door, and of course, out of the keyhole as well. Look through the keyhole, I guess. Of course he looks through the keyhole. Of course I did. I didn't have any other option. Freaking one path, 30 minutes. On the other side of the door, Monsieur de Vaudremere stands naked. I better not see none of that. I don't want to see none of that Vaudremere ass. A sheen of sweat covering his exposed skin, facing away from Domenico's gaze. He is engaged in self-pollution, breathing heavily and occasionally moaning. Ow! Ow! Oh, I don't need to know about that. A sight which makes Domenico instinctively cross himself in a futile attempt to protect himself from temptation. But temptation is the point. He watches through the keyhole again, and Domenico's eyes lock with the historian's. He hears a click and the door opens. Oh, jeez. Oh, jeez. It's a naked man. The door opens, and de Vaudremere is standing at the edge of the bed. He is holding 2 small mushrooms with small bell-shaped caps and slender stipes. He consumes one and holds the other one out, inviting Domenico into the room. Are we doing some shrooms and then sex? Shrooms and sex is what this is? His 2 feet. Ah, so this is still a dream then. How thrilling, but how disappointing. Lead him to the edge of the historian's bed. Is this a dream then? Are we sure this is a dream? Domenico kneels and receives the Eucharist, receives de Vaudremere's fingers as he places the mushroom into his mouth. You know what? I get it. people are into this, and I understand. I get it. As long as Dominico is of age, as long as our boy Dominico is able to consent as a legal adult, it's still a little sketchy. But, you know. The historian's fingers linger on Dominico's tongue. His prick is flaccid. Perhaps it's not that kind of dream. You've done this before, haven't you? Oh, this is a dream, isn't it? Yes. Yes, he has. Were you close? You and the impure priest? Yes, that's right. During the Lent confessions, the alluring presence of the devil touched him then, the way Pear was touched also. Ah, damn it. Fair enough. The goddamn impure priest. That's him. Living excess of polluted phlegm. A being sick with want. Oh. Well. I guess we're fucking. Dominico crawls onto the bed. Wretched insect that he is. Hey now. Have a little self-respect. Have a little self-respect for you. Go and get what you want, bud, and respect yourself in that. And stands domineering in front of Devodramir. He takes the historian's head in his hands and leads it towards his wetness, the cup of wine, the holy receptacle, other religious innuendos and such. As he approaches climax, he looks down and sees a monstrous giant cicada in the historian's stead. Oh no, its shell is olivine and its wings shimmery, and as it starts singing gently, Dominico feels pleasure take over his body, and he spends. I think I know what he spends means. Ooh, oh, okay. Great. That's not where I wanted that to go. There weren't a lot of places that I wanted it to go, and that was not one of them. Great. Dominico woke drenched in sweat. His knee stump was itching. It almost felt inflamed. Outside, the morning birds were welcoming the sunrise. I'm sorry, hang on. So we were dreaming, woke up from that dream realizing that it was a wet dream, and then when we didn't even go to clean ourselves up. We just immediately went to Devodramir, where we realized that we were still in a dream that ended up turning into a really, really weird sex dream, where Devodramir turns into a cicada. And now we've woken up from that, which was in itself not a wet dream. Let's be very clear. That last layer of dream seems to have not been a wet dream, save for the sweat. Just so we're all clear. Just so we're all clear on what just took place. Cool. He tried to remember his dream. Why? Why would you try to remember that dream? He felt that it had revealed something important to him. Something he shouldn't forget. Like, is it that the historian is on the side of the statues? All he could remember was the sound of cicadas ringing in his ears. Later, he greeted the historian as the man examined the statues. Devodramir greeted back with another tip of his hat. In his other hand, the historian held a handful of mushrooms. Interesting. We didn't know up until we didn't have any concrete evidence in real life up until now that the historian had shrooms. We only knew that in the dream. So that's very interesting. They had small bell-shaped caps and slim and slender stipes. Interesting. All right. Oh, autumn. We heading ourselves into some autumnal shit. All right. Okay. The pestilence. Sounds promising. That sounds promising.
As summer crossed into autumn, the townsfolk started getting afflicted with an ailment which puzzled even Mamet, who had concocted many ointments and remedies and watched over countless numbers of illnesses over the years. She had not seen anything like this. Rougi was the first to take ill, which put a lugubrious veil over the entire village.
Ah, yes. We all know about our lugubrious veils. I think it's a word that I used to know the definition of, but throw up the definition of lugubrious while we're at it.
Rougi was the most sanguine, a man who would take even the most squalid situation and see the comedy in it.
You can figure out what those words mean via context clues. You can figure that out. There's a lot of words in those two sentences that I just don't have time to check out.
People had often referred to him as the village's lucky charm, a balm of levity in a hostile world. In the beginning, Rougi went to Mamet to complain about dull body aches and a migraine that obscured half his vision.
Yeah, you want to get that checked out. You want to get that looked at.
He described it as bright, pulsating patches dancing in front of his eyes. Mamet gave him a concoction made from willow bark and sent him on his way, telling him to come back if the pain became worse.
Well, it's the pain and also the vision obscuring. That's also a problem.
Rougi came back after 3 days. With great pain, he said the dull ache had turned malignant. It felt like liquid fire replaced his blood. Worst of all, he said, is that laughing hurts. How can I continue living if laughing hurts? Mamet shook her head, realizing that this was out of her capacities as a healer.
That's a bummer. That's a fucking bummer is what that is.
Later, she said she sent Domino to fetch Monsieur de Vaudremere. Surely with his anatomical knowledge he would know how to cure the man, who was looking quite poorly when they got to his house. His skin had turned waxy, and he kept contorting his body to alleviate the pain.
Ooh, we don't want the waxy skin. The rest of that is bad, but we really don't want the waxy skin.
De Vaudremere took Rougi's pulse.
Okay. Oh, I don't know I don't like the diagrams we're looking at here.
This is not good, he simply said.
Oh, thanks, Doc. Thanks, man.
Domino watched as de Vaudremere examined Rougi, poked and touched him with gentle, careful movements. Where the historian touched Rougi, Domino instinctively touched on his own body.
All right, Domino, I'm gonna need you to stay focused. Stay ahead in the game, please.
He needs new blood. Dominique, would you fetch me my tools? They are in that black purse over there.
What followed was an agonizing sequence as de Vaudremere cut through Rougi's skin to bleed him. Ah, yes, some good old bloodletting. Some good stuff here.
Rougi wailed as the blood poured out of him, slowly filling a small basin that the historian had set on the ground.
Lovely. Lovely. We love to see it. Good.
De Vaudremere then took out a device with needle-ended tubes on each side of a reservoir made of thin leather joined with a pipette. He pierced Rougi's skin on the side of his neck, quickly inserting one of the tubes in the hole. He then undid his shirt, this time piercing his own arm, where his forearm and his upper arm met.
Is this a quick little blood transfusion in the olden times? Is this what we're working with?
When Domino left the house to get some rest on de Vaudremere's insistence, he turned around one last time and saw the historian-cum-doctor sitting slumped next to Rougi, holding the sick man's hand and whispering in a low voice into the moaning, agonizing man.
Rouget did not get better. Shortly after the transfusion, he had recovered just enough to be able to speak again. Then the illness took him with renewed furor. More perplexing symptoms manifested themselves. Dark patches spread on Rouget like bruises, except these looked like growths of mold. They were powdery, mostly black, with the occasional pale green blotches, like a crystallized manifestation of melancholia. Ah, so like the black and green splotches that we have in our lovely background here, like those. The moldy growths secreted a peculiar, sickly, sweet fragrance. Something about it felt familiar to Domino. Is it lavender and rot? Is it the classic combo of lavender and rot? Lavender and rot! Our favorite combo. Rouget passed in the night, and most of the villagers were there to witness his final moments. To the horror of everyone present, he had gone screaming into the Lord's arms, body contorted in pain and petrified as the ink rot took over it, and thus there was nothing left of the amiable, easygoing man. That's a real shame. Pour one out for a real one. On the same day, Rouget was lowered into the ground. On the same day Rouget was lowered into the ground, another villager came to Mamet about dull pain and migraines. A sickly sweet fragrance soon enveloped the village. The townsfolk burned incense to cover the smell. It's 'cause of them goddamn statues, isn't it? I think it's all because of them stupid statues that's been popping out of the ground. The festival. Do we wish to go to the festival? I don't know if we wish to go to the festival. By the time the townsfolk made preparations for La Festa de la Vendemia, the harvest festivities, more than 3/4 of the population of the village had taken ill. Ooh, that's a shame. Ooh, that's a bad time. The miasma that was infesting them wouldn't let up, which was made somehow worse by how abundant this year's harvest was. An abundance of grapes and wine meant little when the people meant to be enjoying the fruits of their labor are dying. There were whispers running around the village about how nothing had been going right since that nobleman had arrived, with his tools and his smile and his futile attempts to help cure the ink-rot afflicted wretches. I mean, the statues showed up before he showed up. I'm saying there was a statue before there was the historian. I'm just saying. Others claimed that the statues must have brought the disease onto the surface from hell. After all, the bruises on the victims' bodies looked somewhat similar in color to the aged bronze of the statues, the sickly olivine patina and the silky gleam. We do love that sickly olivine patina. We go nuts. The people lose their shit over the sickly olivine patina. Esterello, the tavern's landlady, theorized offhandedly to Domino that Dvodramir had brought the disease with him from the capital. Gwen agreed with her. This element must come from the king's palace himself. No other place in this land is filled with rotting scum in such great numbers. The night they are in there must be so thick they can barely see each other's faces. He laughed, and as he laughed, he winced. Domino could tell that the disease was slowly eating him up, although unlike with what happened with Rouget, Gwen had been holding strong, mostly. He had refused the historian's help, only trusting Mamet to give him potions against the pain. Domino himself had noticed a few days prior that under his prosthetic leg, his stump started displaying patches of black rot. Oh. That's weird and probably bad. But also, curiously, it wasn't hurting him. Which is very weird and also, I would say, still concerning. He poked and prodded at the mold, resigning himself not to tell anyone about it. That sounds like a bad idea. Like, I realize people in this town are, suspect or suspicious of other things, but maybe you should tell someone about it. When the festivities began, a welcome new breath of life breezed through the village, like the levantus that blows on sunny days. I don't know what levantus is. Editing Connor. Find out. For days, everyone danced La Farandulo, diseased and healthy. No distinction was made. That's a bad idea. If this thing is contagious, unfortunately, you might want to separate out the two. Unfortunately, it's a shame, but it's just safe. They danced, swaying and holding hands in a long string of men, women, children. Guided by none other than Gwen, more people joined the dance, and laughs erupted as the galoubets and tamarins accompanied the dance as the serpentine procession went through the village. Gwen led the dance out of the village, onto the dirt road that went up the hill. Are we heading toward the statues?
Come on, brother. Let's go.
Nanoon took Domenico's hand in hers, and together they joined the dancing chain. Most of the village was ailing from the rot, which made them less scrupulous of one's skill in dancing. It was a relief to Domenico, whose leg couldn't allow him to move in confident steps like Gwen or Nanoon. The frail chain of dancing people slowly made its way through the landscape. When they passed the field with the statues, some of the townsfolk broke out of the chain. They then lifted the statues off the ground and, taking their bronze hands in theirs, joined the dance again, an addition to it, which made everyone roar in laughter. Ooh, I got a bad feeling about this. I feel like something bad's about to happen right now. There was a saying when it came to Farandulo, that if you were the last one in the chain, you shouldn't look towards the person holding your hand behind you until you could hear their voice, laughing or singing or talking. I don't like that you're telling me this. The reason for this was that the recently deceased always added themselves to the end of the string, and the bridge between the living and the dead was that hand, the empty hand of the person at the very end of the string. Okay, that's very touching, and that's a very cool angle on a tradition, but I have a feeling that it's going to get twisted around so that I am extremely creeped out. You see, everyone had been at the end of the string at some point in their life. They all knew that death was always part of the dance, right behind them. They all knew that a comrade's voice was what delivered you from the terrible temptation of looking back, like Orpheus once did. I'm not explaining that myth. That's from the myth of Eurydice. So look that up for the reference, and you'll appreciate the reference like I do. I like that reference. When the dancing villagers finally arrived to the clearing with the tall pine, Gwen, who had so far been adamant in leading the procession forwards and onwards, took the hand of the person at the end of the line, closing the circle. They circled like that around the pine tree for what felt like hours. Is this the same pine tree that had pear? Is this the same pine tree? Finally, the music slowed down to a halt, giving the dancers some respite. Gwen then walked to the center of the circle, holding a large effigy made of cloth and wood and glass. The effigy was in the shape of a cicada. Its giant eyes reflected the full moon. Okay. Why is the effigy in the shape of a cicada?
The Catholics tell us that long ago, God sent cicadas to Provenza.
Oh, it might be Provenza. That makes sense. To rouse us workers and farmers from a time of rest, as to force what they think is laziness out of us. He raised the cicada effigy above his head so everyone could see it. They don't know the truth. They don't know that the Lord, in his mysterious designs, made cicadas in our image. We are joyous, the sun makes us sing. The cicada's strength and ours is our resilience. Cicadas dig through the ground for a deep slumber, and even the coldest frost or the most infernal of forest fires can't reach them there. They bide their time in the earth's soft bosom. Gwen looked exhausted. The ink rot had taken over the left side of his chest, and his old scars were bleeding, glimmering in the moonlight. Ooh, Gwen, you take it easy now, now there. We can't be losing you now. We're all sick now. It's hard to predict if we'll make it through this winter. And yet, cicadas do. Every year, they emerge to the surface to sing again. As he said that, Gwen placed the effigy on a pedestal. Pedestal. Someone passed him a torch, with which he lit the cicada on fire. We will sing again. Hell yeah, Gwen. That's great. That's nice. I know it's not gonna go well from here, but that's nice. The crowd erupted in cheers, and the music started again as Gwen joined the farandulot, dancing in a pulsating circle around the effigy engulfed in flames. As the surroundings became brighter for all the flames, Domino finally noticed the historian. He was watching the dance from afar, with a pernicious glimmer in his eyes. Oh, we don't like pernicious glimmers. We don't much care for pernicious glimmers. Okay. Ooh. Winter. We closing this bad boy out. Okay. The devil. Well, I guess we'll see how this goes. The Mistral had been blowing for 9 days when Nanoon succumbed to the rot. Oh, not Nanoon. I can't say I didn't see it coming, but that's a shame. She had battled the disease with great courage, holding hope and smiling until the end, despite the agony and the pain and the endless transfusions and the rot viciously taking over most of her body. By the end of it, she could not speak for her inside. She could not speak, for her insides were petrified by the disease. Something in Domino broke forever as he held Nanoon when she sighed her last. He had never seen Mamet weep before. Everything is fucking dying and I can't do anything about it. Ooh. That's a line. That hits a little too hard. Okay. Gwen looked greatly diminished against the gray sky. With great difficulty, shoveled dirt onto yet another body. The rot had stiffened his friend Pow's body in a grotesque pose. The moldy contusions covered much of his skin, which made him look like one of the bronze statues. The remaining villagers all thought it, but never uttered it out loud. The idea that they were somehow returning their petrified relatives and friends to the earth in exchange for all the statues that they had dug up. An unfair exchange they never bargained for, and they were bludgeoned by the short end of the stick. Since autumn, the death knell had tolled countless times, and each time the surviving townsfolk wondered which ones of theirs had gone. Domino, himself weakened by the illness, shoveled in silence. Devodemir is doing quite well for himself, though. He glanced at the historian, who was writing down observations in his notebook. He now resented the man, the way he hovered around the dying with his infernal devices, affable and dishonest, predator-like. Ah, the king's devil. I ought to beat that haughty look off his face. Alas. Gwen's once strong hands looked as if they were dipped in mold. He could shovel dirt, but for how long? He could beat Domino, but he may leave his hands behind by doing that. The trade-off was fairly tempting, but Gwen took great pride in his hands. With these I built half this village, he often said. Why am I, like, actually sad? How has a story this short affected me this much? It's because it's good. It's because it's a good story. A large hole had appeared in the fields where the statues were dug up. It was as if the ground had been pierced by a dagger, and its wound had stretched as it festered. A narrow yet perfectly cut stairway descended from the entrance, and you couldn't see further than 6 feet, where the stairs met thick darkness. The irregular walls of this tunnel were covered in black mold. Domino witnessed the historian descending into the hole without hesitating or even holding a lamp, which made him run, as close as running he could really do in the pitiful state he was in, to the village, alerting Gwen and the remaining people who were by now waiting for death to overcome them. Later, they all gathered in front of the hole. It was night, and their worried faces flickered in the warm light from their oil lamps. "You have to let me go after him, Gwen. You told me to keep an eye after him." "I can't have you die alone. I'll go with you." "No, it's too narrow for the two of us. Besides, you should look after the village." Gwen had tears in his eyes. Ravaged as he was by the rot, he was still beautiful, the way a tree devoid of leaves in midwinter was still beautiful. His essence was still the same, the bravest man to have ever walked this land. Domino turned to Mamet, and he could tell she couldn't even bear to look at him. It wasn't a matter of if they both died. It was a matter of when they did, and Domino knew that it would crush her were he to pass before her. He kissed her on the cheek and squeezed her hand. She handed him a dagger. Hell yeah, Mamet knows what's up. Bleed him like he bled mine nude. Can do, Mama. Can do, Granny Mamet. Domino nodded. He embraced Gwen and walked into the dark. All right, let's stab us a noble. He had been walking for about an hour. The general direction of the tunnel felt like it was leading him under the village, although he didn't know for sure how dark and stuffy it was. All around him, the mold-covered walls oozed with a phlegm-like liquid, making him feel dizzy and disoriented. He tried not to think about it, but he felt like prey, eaten whole. Then, finally, light. Domino escaped from the suffocating esophagus and stepped into a considerably larger chamber. Monsieur de Valdemar was standing at the center of it, hunched over and contorting his body in impossible geometry. I don't know if I want to see that. The devil, here we are. I'm assuming this is it. You. Domino whispered the word as if he had stepped into a cathedral. He wanted to shout, stomp his foot on the ground, but something about the spectacle in front of him compelled him to lower his voice. Dominique, I knew you'd come to see me. De Vaudremere no longer contorted himself now, but it looked like something was crawling under his skin.
Ever since you came here, we haven't stopped burying our own. We're all suffering from the rot. I can barely stand, yet here you are, looking good as new. Does this disease not infect blue blood? He was disgusted with Devodramir. He was disgusted with himself for once finding him desirable, for falling for easy flattery, for having been a lecherous fool blinded by his own pursuit of self-satisfaction. He could now see the historian for who he was, a pompous charlatan who bled the whole village dry. The problem with peasants is that your world starts and ends at your village. Never does it occur to you that there is more out there, a world that needs necessary sacrifice to keep turning. What does that have to do with us?
Oh, Dominique, it has everything to do with you. He sighed for an impossibly long time. You see, the Sun King will soon reach majority, and he shall make this realm shine so bright. The entire world shall look toward him, and his absolute radiance. Wars will be waged in his name. The price for radiance is paid with blood. Domenico's hand held firm on the dagger's haft. The Phocaeans once ruled this land. They waged wars also. They won their wars against impossible odds, conquering lands all around the Mediterranean Sea. One could attribute their success to strategy, cunning, and luck. But it's so much simpler than that. Devodramir held a small cicada shell in his hand. It's always been about the cicadas. It's always been about the cicadas. The Ascending Sun King asked me to make it so he will win all wars he wages. And I told him, of course, Monseigneur. I rode across their realm and endeavored to create his loyal servants, molding rebellious heretics into beings that will always turn to the sun and sing his praises, even as the fervor consumes them. Devodramir laughed. I have no ill will for you and your village. It could have been any other village of heretics. There are plenty out there. You were just unlucky. Furor took Domenico. He had been phlegmatic, apathetic about their condition for so long. He listened to Gwen, but could not understand why he had such hatred for the king and his court, the church and its cardinals. He understood then. Evil didn't chasten. Evil didn't manifest in curses. Those were the matters of people, red-blooded and governed by humors, for whom suffering has meaning. Evil was wordless violence, dealt with blind and senseless indifference. Domenico, using the last of his vitality, plunged Mamet's dagger into Devodramir's chest. Blood splattered. I had a feeling this might have been exactly what Devodramir wanted. I got a bad feeling about this. With monstrous strength, Devodramir took Domenico's blood-soaked hands in his and laughed anew as he pulled the dagger out of his wound. Yeah, this is exactly what he wanted. This is exactly what he wanted. Go on, Dominique. Touch my wound and behold me. Oh, well, I guess it's time to penetrate him. Okay, well, that's not a noise I needed. Domenico reached into the wound with his right hand. All he could feel is hot, wet. He could not fathom what he was reaching into. The liquid oozed out of the wound, burning Domenico, screaming in searing pain. That's when Devodramir, the historian, the devil, laughing again and again, jammed his own fingers at each side of his gaping wound, pulling until his skin peeled over itself. Oh, has he been a cicada the whole goddamn time? He's been a cicada the whole goddamn time. Towering over Domino, his translucent wings glimmered in the light of the oil lamp that had been dropped on the ground. The devil had molted out of his squelching human shell into a being of pure infernal horror, ready to take flight. His final Imago. The devil's Imago, you might say. There he is. Epilogue. We love a little epilogue. Great. In the 1860s, a team of surveyors from the Société Générale des Travaux Publics arrived at the ruins of Saint-Lazare, a small hamlet with Huguenot ties generally believed to have been abandoned in the mid-17th century. The surveyors were astounded to be greeted by a number of half-buried bronze statues. As Chief Surveyor Pascal Gros describes in a letter to his friend Marcel Delmas, the statues had a frightening aura about them, as they almost looked like they had emerged from the ground themselves. One of the statues was a figure described as a delicate androgynous figure, with the rusted remains of a prosthetic leg attached to its bronze knee. Its hands had fallen off. Ooh, that's an unfortunate fate for our boy Dominico. Archaeologists called upon to the scene were confounded by the scene, as the statues looked similar in craftsmanship and materials to the works of the ancient Greeks, but certain details, such as the grotesque bug-like appendages protruding from their abdomen and shoulder blades, felt contemporary in their macabre appearance. The archaeologists theorized that the statues were in fact modern bronze work put there as a joke, or perhaps even in order to slow the construction of a dam that would flood a portion of the valley and displace some of the local villagers. No further investigation was made, and the mysterious artifacts were soon forgotten. Ordered by Napoleon III and built by about 500 forced laborers, most of them political prisoners, the Société Générale des Travaux Publics completed works on the dam, creating a reservoir which feeds a large system of canals irrigating the city of Aix-en-Provence, a reservoir at the bottom of which lies Saint-Lazare's ruins and its bizarre statues. There is a small island in the middle of the lake, upon which an old, tall pine tree still stands. Eugene Saint-Gobain, 1919. Interesting. I wonder if that's all true. Oh! Beautiful. 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 Oh my gosh. That was fantastic. That was so good. That was also, unfortunately, way too long to go on the end of... I had originally put this at the end of a 3 scary games video. But that's gotta be its own thing. But I literally intended this to be the third in a series of 3 cute little silly lo-fi horror games. And it's just ended up being one of the coolest works of, like, short horror stories that I've read in a while. It was a little rough around the edges. It could have used another round of editing on some of the, there was some repeated words and phrases in the same sentence and things like that. But for the most part, that was so cool and fun to read. I really enjoyed going through that. And I hope you enjoyed me going through it. I hope you enjoyed watching me go through it as much as I did. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this as much as I did, maybe you want to click the like button. If you want to leave comments as to any other horror stories like this that you would want me to read or go through, let me know in the comments. If you haven't subscribed, this might be a good time to do that. If you want to head over to Fourth Wall and become a member there, or buy merch and support the channel in that way, that'd be hugely appreciated. Totally up to you, though. Otherwise, yeah, thank you so much. I'll see you later.